Hi, this is Miss Litton, and this is my wonderful Period 3 class. Say hi. Hi. And we are continuing on in behavioral ecology. We already did an egg puzzle for the whole first section of it. If you could take a minute to look over that. There were the evidence for genetic basis of inheritance, evidence for environmental influences on behavior, not it. Whoever won, decide whether you're going to support the evidence for genetic or for environment influencing behavior and come up with an experiment that supports that one. Go ahead. I'm going to pause you here.
Green birds that carry venom, snakes, coastal snakes, the inland snakes, and then
my absentees from Friday, you have labs for me. Russia, can you give me your lab? All right. Then we talked in the lecture. There were things about associative learning. You want to review that as well. And then this brings us to, hopefully you reviewed all that, to animal communication. I'm going to jump to that. I think I'm going to jump to that. There it is. Okay. And the first thing you want to know about that is that communication is an action by a sender that influences the behavior of the receiver. And I think that's where you pick up in your notes. For instance, you heard some birds sing, maybe this morning, maybe when you were leaving, but it didn't affect you. You didn't want to run and go get nuts and berries, okay? It didn't influence your behavior. So communication is specifically talking about where it influences the behavior of another. Now, if a dog ran up and was barking at you, would that influence you? Yes. So communication is a social behavior for reproduction, for raising offspring, etc. And it does involve cooperation. And if it's the same species, it can benefit both. We're going to talk about that the more tools that you use in communications, the more species specific it can be, and the less you have chance of having your communication hijacked. For instance, if you're a firefly and you're communicating that you're ready to mate, and in order to do that, you go flash, 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 flash. And that means, hey, I'm ready, come hither. But you could have a predator of the firefly who could make that same bioluminescence and go flash, 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 flash. Okay, somebody's flying over, think they're going to get a little something, something, and they end up getting eaten. Okay, and so if you have some other things associated with it, then you have less of a chance of getting that hijack. So we're going to go through the different types of signals, and the first one we're going to talk about is a chemical signal. And so a chemical communication is effective both day and night. Both day and night. So a pheromone is a chemical signal in low concentration that is passed between members of the same species. Of the same species. So this is a chemical signal. We need spraying tree. So examples are female moths can attract males, cats can mark territory with urine, antelopes mark twigs with eye gland secretions. Lunch, let's eat now. Then we talked about an organ in the nose of mice and humans. It can detect pheromones, and it's directly connected to the hypothalamus. Oldest bio buddy, tell them 2 things you know about the hypothalamus. Go. Okay. Now, so here's an example of chemical communication. We're going to talk about auditory communication, and humans are really good at auditory, at sound. So I want to have you watch this one individual here.
Dog. Cat. American robin. Cricket. Owl. Woo, woo, woo. Crow. Wolf. Peacock. Horse. Elephant. Cow. Sheep. Duck. Goose.
Or
Morning dove. Kookaburra. Humpty. Monkey. And parrot.
all right. She's pretty good at that. All right. So I don't know. She practiced. All right. Let's see from here. Okay. So on your auditory communication, it's faster than chemical communication and also effective both day and night. And it can be modified by loudness, pattern, duration, and repetition. And then there were some examples there. Slate, could you give them some examples that are listed there in number 3?
How do we not know? Males have songs, widows have songs, and people sometimes when they separate some of them in different ways, other animals.
Like I said, communications can be hijacked. So sometimes you want to combine more than one. So in this case, auditory and visual communication.
These are howler monkeys. Their habitat spans from southern Mexico to northern Argentina. Looking at them, you may find it hard to believe that such small animals can make a sound that's like a combination air raid siren and heavy metal guitar solo. The fact is, howler monkeys are considered to be among the loudest animals on Earth. Well, you be the judge. Howler monkeys have what's called a hyoid bone in their throats that serves as a kind of amplifier. Plus, their semi-saggy throat pouches further amplify their orations. Why do they howl like this? Only the males howl. They probably do it to let other howlers know where they are. They're very territorial, so the howl is as much keep away as it is here I am. Howlers live in the canopies of trees, feasting on leaves, flowers, buds, and fruits. They have long prehensile tails that are used as a kind of fifth hand to help them identify things. They can weigh up to about 15 pounds and sleep up to 15 hours a day, which is good news for their jungle neighbors. I mean, you wouldn't want this going on 24/7. It'd drive you crazy.
Okay. Okay, and then, so underneath visual communication, most often used by species that are active during the what, night or day? Day. And you have complex courtship behaviors, exaggerated displays to make sure the meaning is clear so there's no confusion. And then this last form is tactile communication, and this is all about touch. And there are several examples, but a key one that you want to know is the bee dance, and it's called the waggle dance. And when bees are dancing, they're dancing in a hive that's dark, so you're not watching the dancer. This is underneath tactile communication. You are what? Touching the dancer, okay? And the hives are usually on the vertical, and what this bee is doing is he's shaking, 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 and then coming around, and he shake, shake, shake again, and then come around. Now what that shake tells you is what direction the food is in. And on the vertical, what that would mean, if he did his little shake straight up, that would mean when you go out of this hive, fly right towards the sun and you'll run into the food. Fly right towards the sun and you'll run into the food. So in this case, he's not going straight up. What is he doing? Yeah, so the angle here is different. So what that's telling you is off the vertical, when you go outside, look where the sun is, and then fly to that same angle. Okay, and that's the direction in which the food would be. Then on top of that, these shakes right here, these waggles, the waggles communicate distance. And that is species specific. So maybe for one species, that means each waggle is 10 feet. So if it waggles 5 times, that would be fly 50 feet in this angle of the sun. Okay, maybe another one that's 15 feet for each waggle or 20 feet for each waggle. Now, would the dance change throughout the day for the same food source? Or would they dance the same dance all day long for that same food source? Change. Why? The sun. The position of the sun is moving. Okay? Position of the sun is moving. So on tactile communication, number 2, we have grooming, calming, and the waggle dance with bees, which tells both direction and distance. Which tells both direction and distance. Okay, and then all of this, part of this behavior and communication, we've talked about this before, about circadian rhythms. For us, which gland helps us control? Our which gland? Pineal gland, good. So a biological clock is an internal means of telling time, and it's affected by a gene, and this gene is actually called the period gene. And if there were mutations in it, then they weren't able to tell time, judge time. Okay, so internal means of telling time. And then here you go. Oh, and what I want you to be, just a second, let me remove some students here. What I want you to do is be something that you did over spring break that I would want to hear about. Or that's appropriate to hear about. Cried. Nice. Okay, walk through these with your bio buddy and see how you did. Defining a particular area is territoriality. Pheromone, most of you got that. We didn't go over this. This is a pre-question. Altruism. Yeah, but a lot of you got it. And you got that one. Okay, good. All right. So moving on to behavioral ecology, how natural selection shapes our behavior. So behaviors that you have must be adaptive, otherwise we wouldn't continue doing them, right? It has to be something in our genes that makes us act the way we do, and those traits are surviving and reproducing. So those bees that are able to do the waggle dance, and those who are able to interpret the waggle dance, those are the bees that are going to survive and reproduce. So that behavior is selected for. So behaviors would be in our DNA. And you learned from the earlier part of this chapter, some behavior is in our genes, and we said most of it is probably in our genes, thanks to a couple of you who happened to be here for the review, and I recorded that lecture, thank you very much. Some behavior is learned. We talked about that with associative behavior. So one of the behaviors is foraging behavior. And foraging behavior is the idea, and I don't think I put this in your notes, or did I? No. You can add it if you want to. Foraging behavior is this idea that you want to minimize your calorie expenditure in order to get more calories when you're foraging for food. Lions, I think an example in your book or something is lions aren't going to eat ants, right? Because to spend the time to get the ants, it's not worth their time for their nutritional value, right? So this is meant to be a little joke cartoon, but I'd really like the youngest bio buddy to explain, based on what I just told you about foraging behavior, why is that a good cartoon to explain it? Go ahead. Right, so rather than just seeking random areas to try to find a place to hunt, they go to a deer crossing where they're more likely to see deer. Now, alligators do this. They're crossing for herds where they have to cross large bodies of water, and the alligators hang out at those crossings because they're more likely to catch something than some organisms going through a random area. There are natural dips in the landscape where this is where they're going to go through, so they'll just wait it out right there and try to catch something as it's running by. That would be good foraging behavior. So then this relates to territories. So on your notes, did you get adaptive? Do you need anything for the first box, or are you good? Behaviors today must have an adaptive value. Okay. Territoriality and fitness. Territory is a portion of an animal's range that it defends for its exclusive use. Defending that area is called territoriality. Now, last night I happened to watch, I don't know what nature show it was. I don't know if anybody else saw it. But one of the things on there was kind of interesting is in Africa, there is a group of chimps. It's the largest group social behavior living together, and that's our next chapter is population ecology. 150 chimps in this, I don't know what you call them, somebody could Google it. What do you call a group of chimps? It's probably not a herd. It's not a gaggle. Chimps, C-H-I-M-P-S, chimps. 150 in this group. And so let me know when you find it. A congress of chimps?
It says a community.
A community of chimps?
A congress. Yes,
Okay. Nice. So if there's that many in their group, there has to be enough what to support that group? Food. And there's a lot of fruit available, and primarily they eat figs. And they will literally shove them in their mouth, so it's like figs are popping out like this. But this 150, and some of them are massive. This is not like Michael Jackson. This is my little pet chimp. These are like these ginormous chimps. And the section I happened to be watching is they wanted to expand their territory. Why would they need to expand their territory? More food. Yeah. And so they decided, and this is part of the communication, there was this call, and like, this is what this means, because we understand based on research, right? And they're like going, making noises. Of course, I'm not going to try to repeat more than I did. And they all took off, and you see these big chimps, and they're just like, mwah, mwah. And then they stop right and make this long line of chimps. It was like full-on Planet of the Apes looking. And they're all, and now they'll stop and just listen. And that's what they did. You just saw them. It's perfectly silent. They're listening, and then they cut to the chimps whose territory they're going to go on to, who are oblivious that this line of chimps is right there. And they're eating their figs and playing with their babies, and they're all happy, and they're listening. And then all of a sudden, one of them gave the signal. You didn't even see it. It's time to move quickly and quietly. And all of a sudden, they're going through, and you're like, and it actually looked terrifying because they were so big. You're like, I wouldn't want to be in the pack of them. And they could just move up the trees so quick. The ones that are playing, and all of a sudden, whoo, they're screaming, and then they would hit on the buttress of trees. Remember we talked about supports for trees? What they would do is they would sit there and kick and pound the buttress because it reverberated throughout the tree. And they would do that to just terrify them. And you could hear the banging on the edges of the trees, and then they're screaming, and then they're climbing up these trees all fast, and then it cut to this one female, and there's a whole bunch of males, and she's screaming, and they're like, hey, they've got a female, and she escaped with her life, but not her baby. They got her baby, and they're just ripping it apart and then eating it right there. It's barely dead, and they're just, and they're claiming that territory, and a bunch took off, and some didn't, and so they expanded their territory. And it was interesting to watch. This one is feeding, I would guess it was a scapula, based on the structure of it, eating part of this other chimp's scapula, and then this other one's just kind of watching him, and then he just kind of held out his hand like this, and the other chimp took one more bite and just handed it over. Okay? And the reason when we talk about population ecology is chimps in that, what did we call it? Congress community, they're very high, they're related to each other. And so it's like they're a large family traveling together. And when we talk about, remember interspecific competition, intrasexual, do you remember when we talked about, and intras, when you're fighting within the males, they don't do a lot of that once they have their dominance hierarchy set up, because they're so related to each other that if they see one male and female mating, they'll just kind of watch and just, good job, you know, because it's for the good of all. They're getting their genes passed on. Where other times when that'll happen, there'll be big fights, right? Trying to be the one who passes on. But they're looking at it for the larger picture. So we're going to get into that in the next chapter as well. So territory is a portion of an animal's range that it defends for its exclusive use. And then defending a territory, just ping pong back and forth. Why doesn't light shirt go first with A? And just go through those all the way through the examples too. All right. And then, so anyway, the reason why I brought this is this comes back to mating strategies, and part of this we have already talked about because we've talked about evolution and selection, and this comes right back into that. So part we're going to review. So one of you explained this comic right here. Can I have the other bio buddy explain this comic in sexual selection? Why would that be an accurate representation of what might happen? Go ahead.
This is literally like this is Ager's Batman.
King, are you feeling uncomfortable?
Slightly.
Okay. So let me take over. So he is focused on the reproductive success, right? And for him, that would maybe envision getting as much sperm out there as he possibly could. Where she is focused on the love, right? Because she's looking for the support. And there are different strategies. And we're odd, you know, as humans. But there are different strategies because some people act very polygamous, right? But that may be because they're not literally trying to get their DNA passed on. So you can't totally apply it to humans. Usually in the same species, they would have the same agenda. They'd either both be hearts or both be something else. But what you're trying to do is you're looking for that support. If you're monogamous, that's a really, if we look at adaptation right here, they would want to be monogamous because there's such a huge investment in that one offspring, and they each have to take time and sacrifice almost to the point of death for each of them when it's their role, when they play their role out. And what movie did you see? I knew you were going to say Happy Feet. But there's another one. Do you know who the other one is? What? March of the Penguins? Yeah. Did you say it? Yeah, that would be not instead of Happy Feet. Yes. So whoever explained this, I'll let you give it a break and review this again, other bio buddy, and talk about intersexual selection and intrasexual selection. Go ahead, differentiate between. Could you write an essay on this? Okay, explain it that way.
And then on those children, get more females.
All right, so if you're polygamous, you have a single male is mating with multiple females, and it's valuable when females clump around a food source, and there's a limited number that are receptive at a time. Limited number that are receptive at a time. And you're going to get intrasexual with them. that Joe and Jim are going to be competing with each other to maybe be the alpha male to do the most mating. Okay? It could be polyandrous. This is rare. This is when a female mates with multiple males. You get more male help because you're unsure of parentage. So no one male knows if that's their offspring or not, so we all better contribute. Yes,
So
also rare. Go
I was
ahead.
reading the book about that, and so it said that one female mates with these two males, right? And they normally have twins. I forget what species it was. So I wasn't sure like if one twin was from one father and from another.
No, for twins, because she'll just ovulate one time.
Yeah.
So if she ovulates one time, if they're identical twins, then early on in the development, they'll separate, right? And then if they're fraternal twins is when if she ovulated with 2 eggs, and that would be your only chance of getting 2 different sperm, right? Because if she had sex, let's say within an hour or whatever, however long that particular sperm lasts, like human sperm can last like sometimes up to 4 and 5 days within the female's reproductive tract. So if she has multiple amounts of sperm in there, multiple individual sperm in there, then possibly, and if she ovulates twice, then she could fertilize with 2 different sperm. Yeah, and have 2 different baby fathers. All right. And then monogamous is when you pair bond, both males and females assist. So for sexual selection, it's a form of natural selection that favors features that increase an animal's chance of mating. Features that increase an animal's chance of mating. We've talked about this before about dimorphism, sexual dimorphism, where you look different between the males and the females. Males and females differ in size and traits. Intersexual is female choice. And let me see if I have another slide here. Okay, so on female choice, there are 2, we went over this before, 2 hypotheses, good gene hypotheses. She's looking for one who can protect her offspring, the strongest, the biggest, the more fit. If you were going to apply this to humans, this would be somebody who had a good job, who had money, who was dependable. And then the runaway hypothesis, this would be somebody that's good looking. Okay, so 2 different hypotheses on why she chooses what she chooses. And I listed those. Okay. Intrasexual selection is male competition. I think you have a additional or a highly suggested reading and thinking. Yes, on this one. Okay. But intrasexual selection is male competition, which leads to dominance hierarchies and territoriality. And again, reiterating the point, you don't want male 1 and male 2 to fight so much that they become weakened and male 3 swoops in and has all the sex, right? So it has to be competition that won't completely defeat your ability to reproduce. And there are consequences for these dominance hierarchies. Because if you want to be the alpha male, it's going to come from confrontations and you'll have a ranking, but the drawbacks is if you're going to win those confrontations, you're usually larger, so you need to be able to consume more nutrients. You need to have access to food, and also you put yourself in danger because you're defending your females or your territory. So I think you have everything for that. And then applying these to humans where you see, go ahead and have this discussion. Why might you see an older, wealthier man with a younger, vivacious female? I don't know. Have that discussion.
So,
With sociobiology. Okay, here you go. What? Oh, it's so that different classes are impacted by the testing schedule for juniors. Otherwise, the junior teachers that are in the middle blocks would lose class all week. So this way it's shared amongst 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's why they're flipped. Just keep this in mind so you're prepared mentally which classes you're going into, right? Do you know about the altered schedule? Okay, tell your bio buddy, did you get that right? Because I just went over it with you. We didn't say anything about having to travel larger distances, so I'm not sure why 4 of you would pick that. And not about caring for the young. It's more prone to injury because you're defending and you require more food. Show your bio buddy to your screen. Did you get it right? Did you struggle? All right, and then moving on to sociobiology. Yes.
About polygamous relationships.
Yes.
Could that also backfire if like one male has a majority of children? Does that increase the chance of those children like mating between themselves because it's the same father?
Oh, you mean like in the next generation?
Yeah. In his
That's possibly. That's like with the chimps. There are inbreeding that takes place.
Yeah.
So it must. But remember, this behavior is selected for. So it must be adaptive, right?
Yeah,
So there must be, checks and balances in there to prevent that from occurring. Must be enough variety in there. And then there's another one. What did I didn't see it, but I can't remember. It was a bird, and it was like a estuary type bird. That's all I can remember it. And what you saw is when the mating took place, if they had any other young, then they would go and crush the eggs. Oh, okay, now I got it. I remember now. The male would watch after the eggs, not the female. The male would watch over the eggs, not the female. And so what some females would do, which I could imagine knowing females, that if they wanted to get their genes passed on, they would, when the male might have flown away for a minute, go over and smash all the eggs and kill all the other females' babies. Like smash, peck them, and like they could be almost ready to hatch, she'd be ripping them apart. And then the male would come back, who he was supposed to be watching those offspring, and be like, they're dead. Okay, but then she would present herself for mating, and he can't help it. That's like a sign stimuli. It's a releaser, and he just starts going for it, and he just mates with her. So she's like, boom, now watch my kids. Okay, and so there are some incredible, like, complicated behaviors that are out there that you think, why are you doing that? It's like you feel bad for the male bird, but he can't, whatever, okay. So this is all part of our sociobiology we're going to talk about. So advantages to living together. These are, why don't you just ping pong back and forth? Those are pretty self-evident, I think. Just dark shirt, you go first.
Okay. Live together more and distract better. Operate the young together in group signals and work together.
One of them gets eaten, releases a chemical that tells it to run.
So, sociobiology applies the principles of evolutionary biology to the study of social behavior, and you look at cost-benefit. So the advantages have to outweigh the disadvantages, and here are some of the advantages. And the last one you need to add in there, besides avoid predators, raise young, is find food. Find food. So those would be the advantages, and those must outweigh the disadvantages that comes with crowding or living together. Things like when you're living together in a society, a group, you can have disagreements. Fewer overall young because there's like usually a pecking order and only some are doing the reproducing, and it's very easy to spread parasites. And I think I gave you everything for that. So now, when organisms live together, sometimes you see behaviors like this. Now, what are they doing for the one in the middle? Cleaning. Okay, so how is that beneficial for him? He's cleaned up parasites. How is it beneficial for them? They eat the parasites. Do you think, knowing your idea of foraging, okay, the foraging theory, I mean, it takes a lot of time. It's not like you're eating that many insects, right? So why else might they be doing this?
Well, like save their kid.
What?
Like save their kid.
If that's their kid, that would make sense, right? Because you're looking for your offspring. What if that's not their kid? Yeah.
They want the others to do that for their kid later on.
Yes, right? I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, right? I'll do this for you now because you'll repay the favor at a future time. And we have an agreement and we repay favors. If you didn't repay, if you said, hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine right now, but then when it was my turn to scratch and I didn't scratch back, right, I'd be a cheat. So there have to be things along the lines to protect against cheaters because you don't want that gene, the selfish gene like that, to get passed on, right? So this idea here, this is just, pulling off parasites. But what if you're a meerkat, like what we just saw earlier, and what if you're standing on a rock and all the other offspring, some you're related to, some you're not, and you're up on the rock and you're sentinel, you're watching. And when you see some predatory bird flying over, you sit on that hill and you scream and scream. Now all of a sudden you're drawing attention to you. You're not running underground. You're giving me alarm, right? You're giving me alarm. And so it's more likely that you're going to get eaten. Why would they be doing that? And that was what people called altruism. You're sacrificing yourself, your reproductive success, for those of others. And again, I've heard you already come up with some of those. What are some of the reasons why you might do that? Survival of more, and some of those you're actually what to? Related to, yeah. So you're looking at all of your genes getting passed on, and so that's why you would stand on that hill and scream. If you know what this picture is, explain it to your bio buddy. And is it altruism?
But should have done more.
No, she does. Was it altruistic? Did she sacrifice herself? Was it for a random person? No, she volunteered as for who? Her sister, right? So she was caring about her genes, right? Okay. Now, remember what fitness is. Fitness is your ability to pass your genes on. That's what true fitness is. So you're looking for the greatest survival. So on your notes, altruism is a behavior that has the potential to decrease the lifetime reproductive success of an altruist while benefiting the reproductive success of another member of the society. And I gave you fitness already. So when you talk about fitness, it could be due to direct selection. I am trying to pass on my genes. So I'm trying to, if I haven't reproduced yet, I'm trying to stay alive so that I can reproduce, right? But indirect selection is for inclusive fitness. Kin selection, the success of your relatives. You're looking out for that community on the whole. So direct is parent to offspring. Reproductive success of an individual, and indirect is a relative that reproduces. A relative that reproduces. And so your example there is that meerkat screaming. It's got some relatives out there. You look at highly social organisms like anything in Hymenoptera, like bees or insects where you have workers, and that's all they do. They never get to pass on their DNA. But because they're so highly related to one another, it's okay. They'll take the job of a worker their whole lifetime. And like I said about the chimps, they'll just watch. They don't interfere because they are so related to each other. And then this brings us to vampire bats. Now, vampire bats live in caves, and within that cave there might be little groupings, like little pods of maybe, 10 or 12 bats that are all together, and this right next to another little pod and right next to another one, and they fly to that same spot every night. And when they go out, these vampire bats, they usually go try to find an herbivore. What's an herbivore? Yeah, okay, maybe a carnivore, but usually an herbivore. And then what they'll do is they'll take their teeth and they'll tear into them a little bit, and then literally try to suck the blood out. And that's how they get a blood meal. They're vampire bats. And the thing will try to kick them if it can or get them off there because they don't like that. And then they fly back to their cave. Well, if you don't get success, if you don't actually get a blood meal that night, then what you need to do is you just turn towards your neighbor and you lick that bat face, and they'll turn and regurgitate some of their blood meal for you. And you know they're going to regurgitate for you because if they get in the same situation, you will what? Regurgitate for them. Okay? And so it's all scratch your back, you scratch mine. That's referred to as reciprocal altruism when that takes place. Now, if, however, you get a vampire bat and he goes and licks face and bat regurgitates, yay. But then the next time, then that person who regurgitated for the one licks face and he doesn't get a blood meal back, he's like, what? What? Okay, I see how this is. And he'll go lick another one's face, but they all learn, oh, you're a cheater. So the next time he licks face, they all like, what? No. And they all will just turn and isolate. And I watched a little documentary on this one time, and he's just like licking everybody's face, and you just see all the bats like ignoring him. Usually they get weak, they can manage through one night, but the next night, because they're weak, they usually don't get another blood meal, and they're licking again. They all just ignore it till it falls down there with the rest of the guano and just dies. And so that way you're selecting against, right, a bat that cheats. Does that make sense? Because if you have more cheaters than non-cheaters, then pretty soon it's that gene, right? You could have that allele frequency go up, and then it's not going to work anymore. You're going to have that breakdown. So debt is repaid at a later time. And then above that, the chimpanzees, females mate with several males, close groups, so probably genetically related. All right, and that takes us to the end of chapter 43. And go ahead and open up chapter 44, group shared notes. And hope you're having a good little review there.